Hello everyone, I am Galatea and welcome back to my channel. If you are wondering why I am dressed like a vampire hooker, that's because today is a beautiful autumn day and I have decided to do a Halloween themed video in the spirit of the season about evil sorcerers and evil sorceresses. So a couple of things. I know my makeup is unequal and bad, but I was really rushed for time and I wanted to actually get this video filmed before it gets dark, which it will at any time, any moment soon, so yeah, I'll probably get steadily more orange as the video goes on, as the sunlight disappears. So yeah, if you couldn't guess, no, vampire hooker is not what I'm going for. I'm going for an evil sorceress. Just one that's really bad at eyeliner. Yeah, so plan is to get this video up before Halloween. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'm really hoping that it will, because otherwise it'll make no sense as to why I've done a Halloween themed video with pumpkins. Do you like the effort that I've gone to? Yeah, but anyway, so before we lose the daylight and I start to look orange, let's start. So the evil sorcerer or sorceress is quite possibly the most used and beloved type of villain. They are fascinating archetypes who crop up again and again in different ways in all genres. So to begin with, let's start with defining the classic sorcerer. This is your standard fairy tale sorcerer archetype. These are your black cloak wearing, evilly cackling, might as well have "I'm the bad guy" tattooed on their forehead. They are very obvious and easy to spot, and they're often parodied because they have been done so many times and they're in danger of becoming a cliche if the character has little personality beyond just the trope of evil sorcerer. Voldemort is a classic example of your reliable, good old-fashioned sorcerer. I've come up with a list of criteria which, if most of them are met, almost certainly says that you're dealing with an evil sorcerer. Number 1, they can see all, or they have a beyond normal ability to watch the hero and others, often from afar and often supernaturally. So this could be something like Voldemort in Harry Potter having a mental connection with Harry, Sauron from The Lord of the Rings being able to exert control and watch people through the ring, and Rasputin from the movie Anastasia watching events through his magic little stick thingy. The White Witch in Narnia had spies everywhere, including the trees, and Snow White's stepmother had a magic mirror. Many sorceresses use mirrors actually to foresee things or spy on people actually. That comes out a lot, that happens a lot. There's also the Goblin King in the movie Labyrinth, who watches our beautiful young heroine's adventures through a crystal ball and orchestrates everything that happens to her. Speaking of orchestrating events, that brings us to our next point. Number 2, a sorcerer is manipulative, deceitful and dishonest. They are a puppet master who manipulates people and events. They work from the shadows and behind the scenes, using trickery, and they are rarely transparent and honest about their work. Sometimes they send minions to do their dirty work as well. So, in the later Harry Potter books, Voldemort has ministry officials under the Imperius Curse, and it's really him pulling the strings, as it were. He sends Death Eaters as well to do much of his dirty work. Got Rasputin again, who manipulates events through spells, and those nasty little demons he sends out to sabotage moving trains and other such things. And as I said before, the Goblin King, his manipulations. Number 3, the evil sorcerer is arrogant in the extreme. They believe themselves superior and that they often have a right to exert control over others, which is often their downfall. They often overlook things or people they believe to be beneath them, which can prove lethal to them, and they dismiss the qualities and talents of ordinary people and or the hero, not seeing their value and therefore not seeing them as a threat. In other words, they have a fatal blind spot caused by arrogance. So the evil fairy, also known as the gentleman with the thistledown hair from Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, is so arrogant that not only does he believe that as a fairy he is superior and can do whatever he wants, including enslaving several people over the course of the book, but his arrogance is so extreme that he genuinely believes that he's doing these people a favour and that they love him for it. His blind spot is that he never considers the idea that those he has enslaved might actually not be too keen on him, because he so strongly believes that he has such an absolute right to that level of power and control, it never occurs to him that other people might think differently. Voldemort's blind spot is humanity itself, which he cannot see the value of and so dismisses as no threat to him. By humanity, I mean qualities like courage, self-sacrifice, loyalty, and of course, love. Voldemort is so adamant that he is the most powerful wizard to ever exist that he doesn't truly believe these weak qualities as he sees them could ever be a match for him. Number 4. A side effect of this arrogance is that they often have a title or a name which is sometimes self-given, which demonstrates their love of power, or they are some sort of recognised authority, and also they almost always have many followers. So Lord Voldemort, he named himself, as well as been called the Dark Lord by his followers. The Dark Lord is also a name given to another, older, and even more powerful sorcerer, Sauron from the Lord of the Rings. The Goblin King is, again, a king, and with plenty of goblins at his beck and call. Number 5. The evil sorcerer has often given up something essential to humanity to gain their power, whether it's their soul or simply their morality, a deal with the devil type thing. Sometimes it's literally a deal with something demonic, which shows their love of power. So they've traded in something good about themselves in order to reach that level. So Voldemort does in fact give up part of his soul to ensure his power, also ensuring that he'll never be truly human again. Sauron gave up his divinity and goodness to become all-powerful. Jafar from Disney's Aladdin ultimately gives up his humanity and even his freedom to become as powerful as the genie. And Rasputin from, again, Anastasia, made a deal with an unknown demonic entity and gave up his soul to curse the Romanovs, which means he's stuck in limbo between being dead and alive throughout the movie. So, number 6, which leads on from number 5, and that is that the evil sorcerer is often clearly non-human in some way, either devilish or demonic. But if they were human, or they still are human, often the power has transformed their physical body in some way to show how power corrupts and separates them even further from humanity. So again, Voldemort, though he was once human and once very handsome, has become a creature that bears no resemblance to a person anymore, being a parasitic life form in the earlier books, and then a snake man when he finally gets his own body. Sauron was never human, and doesn't look anything like a human, and as for Rasputin, his body is dead and slowly falling apart. I've never actually seen Star Wars, forgive me for that, but from my understanding, Darth Vader also fits a lot of the sorcerer criteria, and also, from my understanding, he doesn't look physically human, or there's something slightly different about him, and I know he wears the black cloak and the mask all the time and stuff as well, which again separates him from a normal person. Number 7. And this is the most important quality of a sorcerer, without a doubt, and that is power and control. So as I say, these are the most important requirement for being a sorcerer or sorceress, without which I do not believe a character fits the archetype at all. The sorcerer must either be, or want to be, incredibly powerful. So the most interesting thing about sorcerer archetypes is that magic is not necessary to make them a sorcerer. Above all, the sorcerer wants power and control, which is sometimes achieved by magic and sometimes by something else. So again, we have Sauron from the Lord of the Rings. He wants power and control over all living things. Voldemort again is incredibly powerful, one of the most talented wizards to ever live, and he wants and cares about power more than anyone or anything else. So I was going to make this next bit another factor on the list, but really this is an extension of the power and control element to a sorcerer. It's just a different way that it presents itself. And this is that so often the sorcerer wants to corrupt the innocent hero or something or someone they can't control. So a lot of evil sorcerers have an obsession with the protagonist. Either they want the protagonist to join them or they want to destroy them, sometimes both. We see that with Voldemort. And others as well. So sorcerers want to prove that the light, or goodness, is no match for the dark, and to do that they want to stain the protagonist's light, as it were, to make it filthy before they kill them. One could argue that the sorcerer is drawn to the light and is envious of it, but they know that they've stained themselves with too much evil to ever get there, and so they want to stamp it out in others wherever they see it. This could also be because sorcerers are completely obsessed with power and control, so that they cannot bear to see anyone walking around not under their influence, which is often the protagonist, and so they have to see them bend to their will. Or it could be both of those things. I think it is both of those things. I believe that we see both of these factors with Sauron in The Lord of the Rings. He's doing this through the One Ring. He must control everyone, and he does this through corruption. If you've got the ring for too long, you start to be corrupted by the darkness. His aims for the world at large are to enslave every creature and bend them to his will. Utter control and corruption of everything are the true aims of the sorcerer, or the sorceress. So Voldemort has this with Harry, yes, because of the prophecy, but I think it's more than that. I don't think it's just because of the prophecy that he wants to go after Harry. It's Voldemort wants to destroy Harry, yet he lets him slip through his fingers so many times because he wants to destroy him in the correct way. Voldemort wants to corrupt and destroy both Harry and Dumbledore for various reasons, but I think a lot of it is because neither of them can be tempted by the dark power, and therefore he can't control them, and he hates that. So, just to reiterate, out of the 7 sorcerer/sorceress traits I've given, only one is necessary to classify a character as a sorcerer or sorceress. This one trait is also the purpose, I believe, that the archetype of the sorcerer serves, their symbolic meaning in the story. The only necessary trait the sorcerer or sorceress needs is to have a love of power more than anything. Their one goal needs to be total control. This is what makes Voldemort, in a book full of witches and wizards and magic users, that's what makes him the only true sorcerer. Not his magical powers, because everyone has them. No, it's his love of power and control. The purpose of the sorcerer and sorceress is to show that absolute power corrupts absolutely. The sorcerer is all about control. They want to wield utter power and control over everything, and sometimes that means through magical power, and sometimes it means through power of another sort. So now that we've established some of the traits of your classic sorcerer or sorceress, I'm going to talk about the differences between a sorcerer and a sorceress. Because there are differences. Both a sorcerer and a sorceress want power and control, they just go about it in very different ways. I know the difference between them isn't gender. So, it took me a while to figure out the differences between sorcerers and sorceresses. I always knew there was one, but it's hard to put your finger on it. So this is as close as I can get to explaining these archetypes, in my opinion. So, a sorceress works more with the emotional plane and the subconscious, and a sorcerer works more with brute strength, with the physical plane, with the conscious and will. In other words, sorceresses use temptation and sorcerers use threats. I guess it's kind of like the difference between bribery and blackmail, sort of. Though that's really oversimplified. So, I think this is why femme fatales, or temptresses, are often interchangeable with sorceresses. And why sorceresses have a reputation for their power lying in their beauty and sexuality, and sorcerers don't. But to say that a sorceress controls through sex and beauty, though yes, many of them throughout literary history do, that's an oversimplification of where the true power of a sorceress is. I think that's why a lot of people get really annoyed with this cliche when it comes up again and again, because it seems to be saying that a woman's power is only in how beautiful she is. Which yes, is very annoying, I totally get it. But I think this comes from many writers reducing the power of the sorceress right down to its most easily understood and simplest form. Sexuality and beauty is only one expression the power of the sorceress can take. In reality, her power actually comes from, I believe, her ability to understand and manipulate the emotional realm. And this is not something to be taken lightly. This requires a lot of intelligence and a lot of power. So it's not as simple as saying, oh, a sorcerer is actually more powerful than a sorceress because the man gets real power, whereas the woman only has to be beautiful. No, not at all. Just like the power of the sorcerer does not come from his strength, but actually from his intelligence, the power of the sorceress too does not come from her beauty, but her intelligence. We see this in the archetypes of a sorcerer and sorceress when you remove their intelligence. The sorcerer without intelligence is no longer a sorcerer, but a brute, and a sorceress without intelligence is no longer a sorceress, but, for want of a better word, a bimbo. A sorceress does not have to be beautiful, and a sorcerer does not have to be strong. They have to be smart. They are equally as powerful as each other. They're just working with different types of power, different realms of reality, manipulating different aspects of a person. A sorcerer wants total control of the physical world, because that is where his power comes from, like Sauron or Voldemort. A sorceress, however, wants total control of your emotions. This is why I think many of them have an obsession with being adored. They want total control of your heart and realms beyond the physical, because this is where their power comes from. And though I know I'm saying him and her, don't freak out. A sorcerer can be either male or female, as can a sorceress. That's very important. I'm going to say that again before people start going absolutely crazy in the comments. A sorcerer can be either male or female, so can a sorceress. It is not the gender of the person that matters, but the types of power that they are working with. I'll also talk about male sorceresses and female sorcerers, because yeah, there are a lot of them. So the reason though that I'm mostly referring to sorcerers as male and sorceresses as female is because in general most sorcerers are male and most sorceresses are female. And the original archetype of a sorcerer found in fairy tales is a man, and the original archetype of a sorceress found in fairy tales is a woman, at least in general. But by no means are they absolute rules. In fact, they're very far from absolute. There are many male sorceresses and many female sorcerers. I hope I've made that clear. And again, just to say, it is incredibly rare, almost impossible I'd say, that you'll find an evil sorcerer or sorceress who is exclusively all one or all the other. Practically impossible, as most of them fall somewhere on the spectrum between the masculine and feminine aspects of sorcery, using both temptation and tyranny. Though a lot of them do lean more heavily one way or the other, which is where they will fit and be defined as. But yeah, again, then pretty much none of them are exclusively one or the other. Sometimes it's difficult, actually, to see if someone is a sorcerer or a sorceress. And like I said, most of them are a mixture of both. But a good way of telling is looking at the effect they have on the world. Do they strive for order or chaos? Basically, it's very hard to define, I think. Following the examples I will be discussing, I don't want to see loads of comments from people going, oh, you said this person was a sorceress, but here they acted like a sorcerer. Or, oh, you said this person was a sorcerer, but look, they acted like a sorceress here, so you're completely talking rubbish, and yeah. Let me just say, I know. Whatever you're about to comment, I have probably already considered that. And as I said at the beginning, nothing is so black and white as that. You know, people are not as clear-cut as either completely masculine or a sorcerer, or completely feminine or a sorceress. No one, not even fictional characters, or at least good ones, are entirely one or the other. Are entirely order or entirely chaos. No one works completely with their head or completely with their emotions. No one is either completely irrationally emotional or utterly devoid of emotion. People are always a mixture, in different measures depending on the person. The reason I am talking in extremes is because the archetypes of the sorcerer and the sorceress are extremes. They represent two negative sides of the human consciousness, and it is only in understanding them in their extremes, in their purest forms, that we can easily spot them either mixed together or in small doses. So I know this video is going to be clear-cut, but that's sort of the point. Otherwise we'd be lost wandering in a forest of confusing, complex nonsense. I know that what I'm about to present is oversimplified. I know that I oversimplify a lot of the characters I talk about. But the point of this video is to oversimplify it, because that's the only way to begin understanding it. You don't start learning about or talking about anything in its most complex form. So before anyone comments outraged that they think I've suggested a character can only be one or the other, and one is how all men are, and the other is how all women are, no. That is not for 1 second what I am suggesting. Do I personally, traditionally associate order with the masculine and chaos with the feminine? Yes, I do. Does that mean that I think all men are ordered and all women are chaotic? Don't be ridiculous. I don't think that order is the domain of men, any more than I think chaos is the domain of women. And I also don't think either is better than the other. Both have good points, and I don't think an imbalance of either order or chaos is a good thing. I think order and chaos are things which must be balanced and harmonised within each person. Just enough order and you get stability, logic and discipline. Too much and you get inflexibility, small-mindedness and control. Just enough chaos and you get spontaneity, flexibility, creativity. Too much and you get confusion, irrationality and destruction. To be clear, when I talk about the masculine or feminine, I'm talking about them more as energies, I guess, or extreme forms of consciousness, or abstract concepts. That's very important. I'm talking about them more as, abstract concepts. I am not talking about male and female as biological genders, okay? This is what I use for myself to personally make sense of these concepts and to easily categorise and understand these polarities. I'm not making an argument here, just so you know. I'm not saying I'm completely right and this is the way it is and you must believe this. So everyone calm down. This is just Galatea mind meanderings that you're getting. I'm not trying to get scientific, okay? I'm not. I'm going down the philosophical route right now, into the rabbit hole of what ifs and possibilities and can anyone really prove anything either way? I'm not talking biological genders in terms of science, okay? I'm talking abstract concepts. Are we good? Like archetypes. Oh my god, I feel like I've had a really good idea where I could do a series called Down the Rabbit Hole where I talk about like the randomest weird stuff. Like with no judgments and without trying to find an answer like 100% either way. I could just like question topics or ideas or philosophy or like just the weirdest stuff. Like with no judgments, without trying to draw any conclusions, without coming up with a decision on it, something either one way or the other. To just like talk about it without laughing at it and just like questioning. Is it all, I feel like that's already a thing, Down the Rabbit Hole. I like that title. I think that's really cool. I feel like that might already be a thing. Because I'll look it up. If it's not, copyright, that's mine. Down the rabbit hole, I'm gonna do it. Well, I might not. Maybe you think it's really dumb. But anyway, not important. So, as I was saying, if you disagree with me on how I've defined a sorcerer and a sorceress, that's totally cool. As I say, this is just what I've come up with and how I see these archetypes presented in literature and myths. I'm just sharing my thoughts, people. I'm not claiming that this is set in stone before you start getting upset. So, the world of the sorcerer should be total order, and in a bad way. It should be, as I said, a world of total and brutal control, of rules and restrictions, a world devoid of emotions, a world of domination and oppression. The world of the sorceress should be total chaos, also in a bad way. An irrational world of nonsense, destruction and death. The world of the sorcerer, in my opinion, rejects emotions completely and all the beautiful things about humanity and becomes a world of cold and clinical logic. The world of the sorceress, on the other hand, embraces emotions completely, to the detriment of reason. Every base instinct and dark desire can be acted upon in the world of the sorceress. Whereas in the world of the sorcerer, everything is squashed out of you. So, we move further away now from the classic fairy tale evil sorcerer and into more murky ground where evil sorcerers are not so easy to spot and can take on many different forms. However, something all of them have in common is a desire for power and a willingness to do almost anything and give up almost anything to get it. So, I found that, particularly in modern movies, sorcerers can take the form of abusive partners. The movie Sleeping with the Enemy is a brilliant example of this. So Julia Roberts' character, I don't know the character's name, but her husband is a man who wants above all, to control completely his world and most of all his wife. She must keep the house in perfect, and I mean perfect, order. Tin cans ordered in almost mathematical measurements type order. She must dress how he wants her to dress. He manipulates her and watches almost everything she does. He's violent with her to exert dominance over her. His word is law. He wants her not because he loves her, but because he wants to feel powerful by controlling and owning someone, and he would rather see her dead than out from under his control. In other words, like a classic sorcerer, he would do anything and hurt anyone for power. Eventually, she must fake her own death to get away, but even then, he's almost supernatural in his ability to hunt her down. His world, the world he is king over, is the classic sorcerer world, one of restrictive, soul-crushing order and obedience. So next, I haven't read the books, but I've come across extracts, and I've heard enough to know that Mr. Grey from 50 Shades of Grey is in fact an evil sorcerer. Just a really badly done one, as the writer had no idea that's the archetype she was channeling when she wrote her romantic hero. So let's see. He has a beyond normal ability to know what Anastasia is doing all the time because he stalks her and hacks into her phone. He manipulates not only her, but he's also a powerful enough man to manipulate events and the people around her to get her where he wants her. He's arrogant in the extreme and believes he is superior and has an absolute right to exert dominance over those around him. Particularly Anastasia, as he wants her to sign his stupid contract even though she doesn't want to. He is a figure of authority and has many followers, aka employees, and he has given up something essential to humanity to gain his power. He's given up the ability to be a good person, respect others, and have healthy relationships. And finally, above everything else, all he wants is complete power and control, both of his own world and of Anastasia. It's undeniable, Christian Grey is an evil sorcerer, and if the writer had realised this, it probably would have vastly improved the book. So then we have President Snow from the Hunger Games. He is a recent dystopian example of a sorcerer. He watches everything through cameras, he lies and deceives the people, he manipulates not only what happens in the world of the arena, where he's very much in control of what happens, but also the outside world through the media, and he is controlling, violent and power-hungry. So power-hungry, he is willing to make children fight to the death if it means the system he is the head of will stay in control. Interestingly, he's also described as smelling of rot, a scent he covers up with roses, which is sort of reminiscent, I thought, of the non-human aspect of the sorcerer. Again, we have Bond villains. I think most of them are also sorcerers, with their ability to see a lot more than they should, or know more about James Bond than they should, either through informants or technology. Think I've been expecting you, Mr. Bond. They control people around them with fear and violence. Often all they want is power, control, and of course money. And the reason they want money is for more power and control. Like a sorcerer. So next we have the Man in the Moon. I can't remember his name, but the Man in the Moon from the Truman Show is another brilliant example. He sees all through however many cameras there are. He controls all. The whole of Truman's world, every traffic light, every event, every friend Truman has, even the weather, is controlled completely by the Man in the Moon. Not only does he control Truman's world, but he also built it. The world Truman lives in is completely the world of the sorcerer. It is a world that is not real. The Man in the Moon has rules clearly laid out which Truman must follow without even knowing that he's following them. Truman is not a person to him, but a project, a tool with which he can demonstrate his own genius and power. He almost kills Truman at one point, would rather see Truman dead than free. The Man in the Moon is a very skilled example of a sorcerer, a true hidden hand. He is controlling every aspect of Truman's life, laying down the law, setting up the rules, even deciding who Truman will marry. And Truman doesn't even know it. It's psychopathic to use a person the way that he does, but it's all in the name of good television. So, now that the men have had their time in the spotlight, let's talk about some female sorcerers. Note, I said female sorcerers, not sorceresses. So, At first glance, Umbridge from Harry Potter seems like a sorceress because on the surface she appears sickly sweet and patronising, but really I would say that she's more of a sorcerer. The effect that she has on the world is one of total order and control, and this is what she strives for. She uses physical threats, threats of punishment and pain, in order to command obedience, rather than hitting people in their subconscious and emotions the way a sorceress would. That said, she does have her moments when she attempts to tempt people, really, or, you know, convince them to do things rather than threaten them, but she's not very good at that. She's more a sorcerer, I think. And just to establish, when I talk about physical, by the way, I'm not talking about physical power or strength. By that I mean what most of us would think of as the real world, the physical world we can touch, see and taste, rather than the harder to reach realm of the sorceress, which is a world beyond the physical, a world of emotions, desires and dreams. So next we have the White Witch from the Chronicles of Narnia, also known as Jadis. And again, I would classify her not as a sorceress, but as a female sorcerer. Of course, she has her sorceress moments, most notably when she tempts Edmund with Turkish delight and a crown, but generally she uses the methods of a sorcerer more. Interestingly, she finds it quite difficult to use the methods of a sorceress, actually. It seems like she did it more out of necessity, and certainly not because it is her preferred method. She almost loses her temper with Edmund several times, apparently finding it difficult to stay sweet and manipulative. She way prefers just telling people that she will kill them if they don't do what she says. This is most evident in the first book, The Magician's Nephew, where we first meet her character. She's described as a proud and cruel beauty, so tall that she's almost a giant. She's physically very strong and imposing, and in this story she uses threats and quite literally throws her weight around in order to get people to do what she wants them to. She doesn't really try to get anyone to adore her. She doesn't try to manipulate them or mess with their head or their emotions. She just threatens them. Basically, do what I say and I might not hurt you. We see this in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe in the way that she runs her kingdom. She wants total dominion of the world and will turn you to stone if you disobey her. She works very much on the physical plane, like a sorcerer, and doesn't really care about the emotional plane in the way your average sorceress would. She doesn't want to be loved, only obeyed. For a more modern example, Meryl Streep's character from The Devil Wears Prada is also a sorcerer. She doesn't work really through temptation on the emotional plane, as she's a cold-hearted witch and barely understands emotions. No, she just scares people. Like, she demands complete obedience and doesn't care if she's hated for it, just as long as she is also feared. Her world is the world of the sorcerer. There are clear rules, there is complete control, and if you step out of line, she'll kill you. Not literally, but you get my point. Right, so because this video would be very long otherwise, I'm going to stop it here. In my next video, after talking in this one mainly about sorcerers, I will be focusing mainly on sorceresses. So yeah, please let me know what you think of this video so far. Comment down below, I'd love to hear what your opinions are. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, Galatea Illustration. So yeah, and like and subscribe this video if you liked it and you want to subscribe. And also, hit the bell as well, because I don't think you get notified if I upload a new video unless you've hit the bell as well. So do that if you want to. Thank you very much for watching and happy Halloween.